Ozarks to the Prairie, the podcast where we explore the many facets of the Highway 13 Butterfly Trail, a 292-mile pollinator corridor connecting communities across western Missouri. I'm John, your host. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, I'm John Dice, your host, and I'd like to introduce today Jessica Poush from the Nature Conservancy. And Jessica is a seed and restoration specialist, and we're going to learn a lot today about what's in the field at Dunn Ranch. Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, yes, like you said, my name is Jessica Poush. I'm the seed and restoration technician out at Dunn Ranch Prairie with the Nature Conservancy. I've been in the position for about 8 months now, and so I'm getting to know the prairie and learn what we've got growing and what we can collect. So my presentation today, I'm just going to talk about what there is at Dunn Ranch, what TNC has been doing in the area for the past 20 years, and just kind of get you acquainted with Dunn Ranch. So if you ever wanted to visit us, we're the northmost stop on the Highway 13 trail. So I'm just going to give a little presentation on what we have at Dunn Ranch and what you can explore if you'd ever like to come visit. Okay, so now I'm going to do the screen share.
And Jessica wrote a really nice little piece that she shared with me about the incredible biome of a prairie, and especially interaction with bison. And I'm totally blown away by the complexity of that.
Yeah, the prairie is definitely very interconnected with each other and relies on a lot of community. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, about how prairie restoration is a form of cultural restoration. But to get started, so all the pictures that you see on the screen right now, I personally have taken at Dunn Ranch through my first just few months of being here. I started in July when everything was in full bloom. So there's a few different species here, some that I didn't know before I started working here, but I'm very acquainted with all of them now that you see in this picture, and I still have plenty more plants to meet as the spring ephemerals start popping up and some of our early bloomers start taking place. So we'll start here. We'll start talking about Dunn Ranch and Pawnee Prairie, which are two properties that TNC owns. So in 1999, TNC purchased about 2,000 acres from the Dunn family, and that would be where our bison units are right now. So what got TNC interested in this property is the fact that there's about 1,000 acres worth of remnant prairie, which remnant prairie is defined as prairie that has never been tilled up by an iron plow. So these microbiomes are still intact. Some of these prairies can be about 10,000 years old. So they've got deep connections with their microbiomes, and the relationships have never been so these are pretty, some of the rarest ecosystems in the world. Another thing that interested TNC about the property is that there's an ancestral lek that the greater prairie chicken dances on in the springtime, about March to April. So these are very rare as well. They get tilled up when agricultural practices are done. So they can lose a lot of these areas if they're not protected by private lands or public interest. So, and then we also do seed collections out on our bison units. So we collect a bunch of different species throughout wherever they can be found out on the unit. There's about 300 different species that can be found out there, and I've collected about 50 some species. So like I said, I've still got more to learn, but we're working on getting acquainted with everything that's out there. Outside of Dunn Ranch Prairie, we also have another prairie that is owned, and it's called Pawnee Prairie. This is open to the public and has an unpaved parking lot in that circle on the corner there, where people can come and we do seed collections out there, and people can come and bird and do insect identifications on a mowed path. So that's another prairie that we have that doesn't get as much love because the bison don't live out on it. We also have a grass bank. This is used to give us opportunities with partnerships with local cattlemen. This gives the cattle farmers an opportunity to put their cattle on native grass, or it gives them the opportunity they get to put their cattle on native grass, and also they can establish native grasses on their own property and give that that pasture some time to rest, and then they can rotate their cattle back onto that and have different paddocks. And there's a whole system with the rotational grazing. But that's another way that TNC helps support local landowners. We also have a farmhouse that we purchased, and it's called Little Creek Farm because Little Creek runs right through the property. We use this for housing staff that can be international or season crews that also will host volunteers and researchers there as well. So there's lots of opportunity to come to the ranch and do research. It's also used as a demo farm. There's also cattle that are out there. So it also gives people the opportunity to kind of see what rotational grazing can look, just kind of like when people have cattle outside their house. And yeah, it's just a nice little demo ranch. As for what the public's able to do, we have a few different areas that you can go to. So Pawnee Prairie is always open to the public, so they can go as long as you're okay with parking at the unpaved trail and using the property respectfully. It's open. Outside of our office, and next to the pavilion, there's a Lordy Marker Trail, which is it's a gravel trail that has native forbs and grasses all throughout. So it's a very like self-paced, immersive experience of walking through like a little mini prairie almost. We have some viewing platforms across the area. At the office, there is our north viewing platform. You go up about 2 stories and walk up the stairs, and you're on an elevated platform that has some binoculars, and so you can look out over the prairie. At this one, it's at the end of at the Lordy Marker Trail. So after you do the trail, you can go to the viewing platform and look over the prairie. We also have another one at our south unit that is handicap accessible and is just elevated a little bit so you can see over the ridge line and kind of down the hills and whatnot as well. There's also 7 informational benches that are located in different parking lots across the prairie. These they're kind of marked here on this map, but they all have different informational tags about different native plants or grassland habitat and wildlife. We also have Prairie Days, which is normally hosted about right here, where we do different things with the public that include like guided tours. We'll have informational booths with local resources. There'll be interactive projects. One year they made seed bombs, and they've had like erosion tables that kind of show how erosion works. And then we always serve a free lunch for anyone who comes and participates. So that's some of the stuff about Dunn Ranch and Pawnee Prairie that I thought would be useful for anyone who wanted to visit, might want to know. Now, if somebody themselves was wanting to collect some seed or come here and collect seed, you just have to reach out. But if you're wanting to collect seed independently, there are a few different rules that I like to try to follow. But the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to have to identify your species that you're wanting to collect. Right here we have purple cone flower, and I think these images are really good at showing how the seed head is going into seed. So these flowers here, this one specifically on the left here in the middle, you can see is the bottom half is getting ready to go into seed, and the top half it's just slowly working its way up. So on the right, this seed head is that one's ready to be harvested. So you just want to make sure that you're not harvesting too early because that's going to affect your germination rate of your seeds. So you want to make sure that they're ready to go. And then when you do find some good spots to collect the seed, you want to make sure that there is a healthy population. You can see in the background here, there's quite a few seed heads around. So we know that there's a stable population and we can take a good amount. What you don't ever want to do is you never want to take a seed species that like you haven't identified or you don't know exactly what it is, because you never know when that's the last plant in the area. And when you're working with prairie species, some of them can be really delicate. And if you're in a good area and you see this really pretty flower, you might be taking the only one that there is. So make sure that you've identified your species and you're not kidnapping strangers. And then once you've decided that this is the plant that you want to take, you need to ask permission. You need to make sure that there's no insects that are using the seed head already. There's no birds already around trying to collect the seed for themselves. So if anything's already on the plant and it's actively in use, respect those beings and move on to a new plant and go collect from there. So once you finally decided that this is what I'm collecting, you only want to take about a third of what's available. So even on this is one on the right here, this is one plant. And so you can count that there's about 6 stems, and you can see only 2 seed heads got cut off of those. So that's part of leaving a third. That also accounts for like the population. You only want to take a third of the population that's available, which if you're following that initial practice, it shouldn't be too hard to follow it while you're collecting on a larger scale.
Quick question there, Jessica. How many plants would a seed head produce, do you think?
Yeah, it depends on what species you're working with, but I mean there's probably just in one cone head 100 to 200 seeds.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you cut off the tops of your seed heads and you'll just collect them in a bag or whatnot. You don't want anything that's gonna like retain moisture because eventually you'll dry your seed heads out. But you just I used a burlap sack. Buckets are a big way that people will collect seed, but like just something kind of cloth and breathable is the best thing to use. So then you'll cut your seed heads off, and you can see in the circle here, that's where the seeds are hidden. You just kind of break back these brackets and your seed will be exposed. So like I said earlier, there's about 100 to 200 seeds in there, depending on how big your seed head is. And this one's real easy. You just kind of crumble it up and they've got big seeds and they'll fall right out for you. So coneflower is a pretty easy one to collect and is a good way to start getting familiar with plants. But seed collection can also be done at basically any age, as long as you have an interest of wanting to go outside and explore. On the left here, this is a group of master naturalists. A lot of them are retired and are later in life. I think a lot of them are from 60 to 80. And then on the right here, we've got some volunteers. This is actually technically my boss and his daughter. And they're collecting seed. She's about 3 years old. So as long as they can identify a plant, you can be out there collecting seed. This is a bit of a mixed group, anywhere from people in their late 20s to late 70s, really. So as long as you want to go out and collect, it's all about community. It's all about being together and learning, who's ready when, what's ready, and just how to interact with your environment in a very meaningful and deep way is how I view seed collection.
Jessica, there's quite a few forbs out there. Is that typical of a prairie mix with grass?
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what the prairie wants, really. So yeah, this area, this top left picture has tons of diversity, tons of forbs in there. But there are some spots that are really grass dominant. So it kind of just depends on where the seeds are traveling, what's in the seed bank, and what kind of resources that area is getting. Sometimes it's hard to visualize what such a small section of the prairie would look like when you compare it to what it used to be, like how expansive it was and everything. So to go from, I think it was like 15 million acres in Missouri down to a couple thousand, there probably was a couple thousand acres that was like just grass or something. So it's hard to recreate a large area on a small scale. So I want to see the prairie kind of do its own thing and see what takes off in certain places. And the bison definitely are a huge part of that as well. When they're moving around distributing seed or heavy grass areas, that's where they're going to be feeding the most.
Mm-hmm.
So forbs might come up really heavy after that.
Mm-hmm.
The prairie is manipulated by the bison constantly, which the prairie probably misses.
Interesting. Okay, wow. Well, that was great, Jessica. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions or?
Oh gosh, so many. Well, in talking about the prairie, can you kind of cover how the differences, say, between the depth of the biome and roots and that sort of thing in a remnant prairie versus a reconstructed prairie?
Yeah, I'll try to speak on it the best I can, because there's a lot of conversation in the scientific world about whether we can ever get back to remnant. Is that feasible? Is it possible? And whatnot. So what I have heard is the most crucial part of a remnant prairie is actually the fungus that is has developed a relationship with a lot of plants over time. So mycorrhizal fungi was heavily associated with trees. And like, I think that's where they kind of like found out about it. But that's how I had heard about it, is these connections underground made with the fungus through tree roots. But it's heavily prevalent in prairies as well. And uh it's hard to get it back. They're doing like some research about inoculating
Hmm.
plants with mycorrhizal fungi and seeing how that works in restoration projects. But that's incredibly new science as far as I'm aware. Like, I had only heard about it like within the last year or so. So these biomes that have never been disturbed, like, I assume still have those uninterrupted connections with that mycorrhizal fungi. And that could be something that we're missing when we're doing restoration projects, because it takes a long time for that to spread and for those relationships to be established.
Right. And yeah. So yeah, in regenerative farming, that's a subject that is gathering steam, I guess. Yeah, I'm interested in that. As far as inoculation is concerned, because over here in my little refrigerator in my office, I have some fungi sealed up in a bag that I'm going to try this year with some inoculation to just see if that makes a difference. It'd be hard to observe that one, I would think.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's out of K-State. They've been kind of working on that the most. There's a company called Microbloom to where you can buy fungi to try to inoculate your own stuff. And that is, as far as I know, the only company that's really kind of doing that with specialized like
Hmm.
specialized for prairies. And it's not just kind of like a common like fungus. Cause I think you can buy mycorrhizal fungi already,
Right.
but these are like spores specific for inoculation on restoration projects, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Even with regenerative farming, no-till, that's a subject that has come up, is the importance of fungi with the roots of plants and even monocultural too
Mhm.
plants. I did want to ask you about how the beaver are doing there. I know you guys have introduced beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the projects that is getting some traction out of Mizzou is a beaver dam analog project.
Hmm.
So they have created beaver dams that are artificially made and I believe it definitely has to do with the Topeka shiner, which is an endangered fish species. So they're building these dams and they're seeing how, if it's affecting their movement.
Hmm.
And then we also, since we started doing those dams, we had some beavers that moved in and started making their own dams. So now we're using that to compare the artificial dams with the real beaver dams and kind of go from there with how the Topeka Shiner's movement across the creeks are.
Hmm.
As of today, actually, I believe that they're going to try to tag some of those fish to see their movement. So that project's kind of in its immaturity and they're collecting a lot of data for it, but it's very interesting and we've got a lot of like positive feedback for it and other people who are interested in maybe getting BDAs on their property.
Okay. So what other research projects do you have going on out there that would be interesting?
There's a few. So yeah, we have these locational collars located on some of the bison. I
Okay.
think they try to prioritize matrons and then large bulls, and they're kind of tracking where they're going, where they're grazing, and how they're spending a lot of their time. We've had people come out and do vegetation surveys, and throw out random squares and kind of explore the vegetation that way. I seen what was the project? I don't think we've done anything with it yet, but like there's a ton of ant hills out here, so like identifying and monitoring those species and doing like a population count is something that we've talked about, but I know definitely like vegetation surveys, the BDA, and the grazing on the bison are some of our big research projects.
Okay. It sounds like such an interesting place to work. Yeah.
It
So
definitely has been.
yeah. Well, Jessica, thank you for your time this morning. And I'm hoping that we can explore some other things that you're doing within Dunn Ranch and talk to some of your coworkers out there too in another podcast. And I definitely want to have you back again to talk about some other, another part of the season to see where you are with seed collection and identification, that sort of thing. How many people do you have coming out there, do you think, in in the summer, I suppose that's your heaviest.
Visitor-wise or like
Yeah.
staff. And as for visitors, it's really hard to kind of tell because we don't have public office hours. And so like there's definitely times where people are like visiting the ranch and like I have no idea.
Mhm.
I know that like when we did Prairie Days, I think we had like 300 some participants.
I see.
So I don't know how they track or if they do track how people come out and visit us.
Mhm.
But I do know that anytime somebody does come out here and visit, I normally get like a few people like every other week that actually make it to the office and like come talk. As for volunteers, we have some master naturalist groups that come and do seed collections. So I have like 2 different groups of that, and I'm working on expanding volunteer groups that want to come out to the prairie, so that would increase
Okay.
our visitors. And then as for like researchers and stuff, we've already had some researchers come this year. We'll be getting interns from different universities this summer, and we've already got a seasonal crew that'll be on from like February to November.
Okay, interesting. Great. Well, I appreciate your time this morning. And like I said, I hope to have some repeats here and also with other folks from Dunn Ranch, because it's in terms of having a large NGO nearby, I think you guys top everybody else. So Jessica, once again, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and a special thank you to our sponsor, Green Hills Communication Company. See you again soon.